So, okay, at last I have some opportunity to say something. It will be, actually, it will be a long story. I understood that I should say something, and well, I can say I have so many reminiscences for my long life, so I should choose something. And actually, the theme which I decided to discuss today is my first contacts with foreigners. You will, well, first of all, who are foreigners? Of course, they are not foreign spies or something like that. It is just researchers, foreign researchers I contacted during my life. And why? Why it is something special, contacts with foreigners. You, for young part of the audience, cannot imagine what was life in Soviet Union when I was young. We were completely separated from all other world. Yeah, we knew that, well, there exists some Western world, but, well, we didn't know anything about it. Well, there were some scientific journals we can read, but for instance, for a long time I have never seen foreign research personally. And so it was a big event for me, these first contacts. So how it happened? And it is an opportunity to remember some persons which are not here, but who played a very serious role in my life and how I made, how I have been involved in international community. So I defended my PhD thesis at, it was long ago, it was 1963. And I published 3 papers in our journal. It was Journal of Computational Mathematics, USSR Journal of Computational Mathematics. And, well, of course it was in Russian, but luckily at that time it was translated into English. And I was very much surprised when I got some responses from the West. All these responses were actually only by letters. There was no email at that time, no telephone calls at that time was possible. And letters, well, it took, for a letter, it took, say, from 1 month to 2 months to go from the US to Moscow, because all letters from US, from the West, were read by a special person in our institute, and then in open parcel were delivered to me. But well, there was nothing special in these responses, and so the first people who paid attention to my publications, it was Olvin Gasaryan from Madison, Wisconsin, and he is alive and still in medicine, but and I guess that you don't know him. It was such Jim Daniel, also from Madison. And from Jim Daniel, I got my first invitation to US, and it was a letter like Boris. But we changed letters. He was also, he worked with unconstrained minimization of functionals, and after some exchanges of letters, he sent me an invitation. Boris, I got money for your coming, for your visit to US. Well, at that time, it was not a problem of money. The main problem for me was to get permission to go abroad. And probably not everybody here knows how this procedure of getting permission, how it looked like. First, I should get permission from my local party committee and also director of my local laboratory. And it was called recommendation characteristica. And in this characteristic, it should be written that, well, I am politically educated, have all the right views on everything, and so on and so on. And also, I'm okay in my private life also. Everything is okay with my family. Okay, and then there were next steps. I should get a permission at higher level and higher and so on. Then the next step should be KGB. And finally, I should get a permission at Central Committee of Communist Party of USSR. So I tried, I was very enthusiastic at that time, so I came to the head of my local party, some head local leader of Communist Party. So I was at the university, at Moscow State University, this mathematical department of Moscow State. So he was a very nice guy, and so I showed this invitation to him, and he said, Boris, hide this and don't show it to anybody. And if you don't want to have problems, forget about this. So, well, it was a wise advice. I forgot about this. So, the next opportunity, and it was a great opportunity, and it realized it was an international congress of mathematicians in Moscow in 1966. Well, it was the first international mathematical meeting in Soviet Union after a long, long break. And so I was young and enthusiastic, and well, and some people from the West, from optimization community came, and these people were Terry Rockefeller and Roger Wetz. And maybe Leonard, just yesterday, Roger Wetz sent some invitation. Not invitation, sorry. Some congratulations to me. So, okay, next. So he remembers where we met several times in our life. So you see, it is International Congress of Mathematicians, 1966 in Moscow. Well, and we became friends with Terry Rockefeller and Roger Watts, and well, Rockefeller was also young, full of ideas. He just wrote his book on convex analysis. It was not published yet, but he told about this, and well, it was really great. Then there was some, okay, no, this is actually, well, he writes that the next time we met, 1975 in Kentucky. That's wrong. Well, I am glad that my memory is better than yours. It was 1980. Okay, but it's a long way to 1980, so what happened later? There was some exchange of mathematicians between Russia and Soviet Union and United States. And for instance, Dmitry Bertsekas visited Moscow, and we also became friends, actually close friends, and it's a pity he is not here today. And then Olga Mangasarian came to Moscow. Roger Watts, no, maybe I'm wrong. Terry Rockefeller came to Moscow as a visitor, and so on. Okay. No, Lena, okay. Let's, maybe the next, my contact is, no, there were some earlier contact. It was a meeting with Leonard Jung. Leonard Jung was postdoc in Moscow, in our institute and in our laboratory. And there is also some greetings from Leonard, and he says some words.
Hi, Boris. Happy birthday.
Hi, Boris. We last met at a nice wine tasting tour in South Africa last August. Who could then believe that you will celebrate your 80th birthday this year? But we have known each other for a long time. We met 43 years ago when I visited the Control Institute for half a year in 1972. And I have appreciated our friendship and your contacts throughout the years. We had planned to come to Moscow and celebrate with you in person like we did 10 years ago. Unfortunately, this turned out not be possible. So instead, we send you our greetings from our summer house. We wish you a very happy birthday and many more years of health, happiness, and success.
Thank you. The summer house.
Actually, our summer house in southern Sweden is exactly on the same latitude as Moscow. So when we stand on our balcony and look due east, Moscow is straight ahead and mere 1,500 kilometers away. So when we wish you a great birthday party in Moscow, we can do it almost with visual contact.
Okay, so I made the next attempt to go abroad at 1976. It was a mathematical programming congress in Budapest. Budapest, Hungary, it was, it was not completely foreign country, so it was in the East Bloc, so it was simpler to go there. But I was invited to give a plenary lecture, this meeting. But I was so unhappy that in mountain hiking, I broke my leg. And, well, nevertheless, I was so eager to go abroad. I was on crutches at that time, but I intended to go to Budapest, and luckily I got the permission. And my passport was ready. But when I came to get my passport to some officer, he looked at me and said, "Wow, what is that?" No, I said, "It doesn't matter, never mind." But he said, "What will Western researchers have an impression looking at you? And Soviet science stands on crutches." So I was not allowed to go. But luckily, well,
I'm looking back.
Luckily, the very next year, my next attempt was lucky, and it's partially due to, it was this International Institute of Applied System Analysis organized in Vienna. And it was 1977. It was the period of huge enthusiasm at the West on subgradient method. Non-smooth optimization was something very hot at that time. And they wanted to invite Russian researchers, and me personally, they knew my works on subgradient method. So it was Michel Balinsky, such a guy who organized this meeting. He was very active, so we spoke with him personally, and then after this talk, he said, "Boris, you don't remind me Soviet citizens. I see that you say whatever you want to a foreigner. It's very unusual." And well, so he became very enthusiastic to invite me. And he said to Russian organizer that if Poland will not come, the meeting will be, it will not take place. Okay, so I was allowed. Okay. In Austria, it's Western country, so I got all permissions. I visited Central Committee of Communist Party and got permission there. And so I came to Luxembourg, and there I met Roger Wetz, I met Claude Le Maréchal, I met Phil Wolf, and also well, many other persons. And it was great. For we had common interests in this non-smooth optimization, and it was like a miracle for me, this first visit. Okay, then it became more common, and there were some good. Well, again, this is wrong. It's not 1979, it's 1977. I remember it very well because it was, so as I said, it was my first visit to the West. Okay, and finally, in 1980, I visited the United States, and it was a long visit. I traveled through the whole state. First I came to Kentucky, there was some meeting there, then I went to Madison, Wisconsin, to Mount Assyrian, then I came to Dmitry Bertsekis to MIT, then I visited Berkeley. Lucien Pollack invited me, and also there were a lot of my friends who emigrated to the United States, and it was a lucky opportunity to meet them. So I crossed the country several times, and it was great. So what else? Okay, it is regarding Roger Wertz. We met in Brazil. We met, well, we met in many places later, but after, okay, this is some trajectory. Okay, actually I don't remember what was this wedding, cultural monuments and so on, but Roger remembers it is some our walk in Brazil. Okay, but actually the next step started at the very collapse of Soviet Union. It was 1990, and it was the epoch of robustness. And IFAC Congress in Tallinn, where I got acquainted with people who are my best friends, Bob Barnish, and Roberto Tempo, Shankar Bhattacharya, and many others. And well, maybe it's not that interesting to mention all my visits after that time. Well, there were no problems, no permissions, just the only problem of money which Jim Beniel got for me. And probably I traveled many dozens of times, probably more than 100 times. I have been in all Western countries. I have been in China, in Taiwan, Australia, North Korea, and so on. So, but it's not that interesting. My first visits were the great impressions for me. So, I think, well, actually, no sense now I'll say it at the banquet, but I want just to say that these people, they opened the world for me, and actually these were great events and great. I remember all these meetings very well. So, okay, so it's about this stuff. So, okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned China.
Yeah.
So you spent some time on the Chinese Academy of Sciences?
Yeah, it was in 1990. So it was long ago, and for instance, it was a visit to Beijing. It was absolutely different than Beijing today. They said that there is just 1,000 of cars to the whole Beijing at that time. So there were just bikers, no cars at all in the streets of Beijing at that time. It was very impressive. And after that, it was my first visit, and I have been there several times. Okay.
We'd like to invite any one of you to share your reminiscences, your maybe short stories connecting to Boris, to the topics you discussed together, you worked on together, and how do these problems sound today, and what can be done in the nearest future. So this is the bunch of the questions, and for any questions. Roman, maybe you start.
I grew up in Kiev, so I didn't got such problems like Boris to try to travel or whatever. This was clear from the get-going that this is impossible. And don't try. So the first time I ended up in Vienna, it was 1988, on my way to the United States of America. And by the way, Boris didn't mention that in 1984, it was a conference in Kiev. And this is when Boris introduced me to Terry Rockefeller and Roger Betts. So when I ended up in Vienna, I went to Luxembourg, and this is another story. I don't want to go into this because it's not directly related to Boris, but what's happened is during my 9 years of tenure as a refugee, I was completely isolated from the entire world, not only scientific world, but in general. Well, some lights was shined when I met Boris, but this is another story. So when he introduced me to Terry Rockefeller, I got a real opportunity to talk to somebody this big, okay? And I tried to explain him what I'm doing, and you know, if you have a function like this, which is not convex, and you make a transformation, it became strongly convex. And Terry looked at me, and he doesn't believe. And what's happened next is, I got a call. If you will show up tomorrow, you will face terrible consequences. And I show up. Okay? And I came, it was a crowd, and Terry is like this, Roman, okay? And he said, well, I spent quite some time thinking about what you said, and you are right. So, in Luxembourg, I brought to him, and this is another story, I brought to him my heavy 420 pages manuscript, Deponie in Vinnytsia. This is after I wrote letters to Marchuk or whatever. They allowed me, because I was not able to publish, I was not able to send anything abroad, so they allowed me to Deponie in Vinnytsia this book. But they didn't allow me to take this book abroad, so I smuggled it. So, but this is me. Now let me stop here. But, you know, I just brought it up because Boris talked about party members, etc. I was free on this because I never applied to anything. Kyiv, by the way, was very different from Moscow, although it was Soviet Union, but this is a different world. I don't want to go into this. So let me talk about something really important, very much to the point. 50 years ago, my teacher, Simon Zukhavitsky, got a manuscript to review, and the manuscript came from the Journal of Computational Mathematics and Mathematical Physics, okay? And the procedure was like this. I was 20 plus, and I got my late friend, Matvey Prima, and the procedure, anything Zukhavitsky has to do, first is asked. So he gave us this manuscript, and Roman, make sure that you will take a careful look and write the first draft. This was the manuscript by Boris and Levitin. And the paper was published in 1949.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So,
I
well,
still don't know who really.
well, so I'm glad that you didn't know this. So I'm proud that I wrote the first draft, and now it became perfectly clear to me that this paper sets new standards in optimization. So after this paper and the conditional gradient, projected gradient, Newton, and the technique which I never saw, how to prove rate of convergence. This is the, along with his papers, more early papers on the gradient method, etc. This is the first time when I saw what is the technique, what has to be done to prove the rate of convergence. Set the standards. It was pretty strange that in 60s, the gradient method was invented by Cauchy, 1847. But only like 100 plus years ago, Boris proved the convergence and the rate of convergence. And then another paper those days was solving nonlinear system of equations by Newton method. And immediately after, it was augmented Lagrangian for equality constraints, and then the heavy ball that Yuri mentioned. And then, again, I learned from Boris the equivalence between the augmented Lagrangian for equality constraint quadratic procs, which is very, very important, and the fact that for the prox function, it's in the dual, it's just a gradient method, and the convergence immediately follow from the gradient paper by Boris. I got the feeling that Boris is at home. So if somebody got something really interesting, he has to go to see Boris. And make sure. It's like, before the war in the 30s, if big mathematicians get up with something interesting, they have to go to the Göttingen and show what's happening. In the world of optimization, to me, it was almost bad. I couldn't travel. I said that nobody can travel. Okay? So the only thing I could do is travel to Moscow. And Boris was always friendly and always sharing. So, although we did our own way in the 60s, but I learned quite a lot from Boris' work and from our interaction. One more thing I want to say before I will finish. Early 60s, it was a time of renaissance. Ottipy. Ottipy. So the cold years of Stalin's regime was over. It was warm, okay? And, you know, people used to say, шестидесятники, the people who was young in the 60s. And when they are talking about шестидесятники, it's poetry, music, etc. This is wrong. Шестидесятники was among the mathematicians. And trust me, the enthusiasm which we all work with, and the happiness, and the beginning of the area of optimization was exactly at the beginning of the 60s. Okay? So the first time I saw Boris, but he didn't see me. It was in St. Petersburg, 61. Those days, Kantorovich, the classic Kantor, was 49 years old only. 49 years old. 61, okay. So it was a very healthy beginning, and the way the life went was very different from what we saw. And Boris, trust me, Boris was the key figure in the Renaissance, in the building up the modern optimization theory. Thank you, Boris.
Anyone else want to?
Maybe the level is too high.
Yeah, the level is really bad.
So maybe something more.
We would prepare remarks from stream of consciousness here.
Yeah, so I was kind of, let's say, an observer of Russian literature for a number of years. I wouldn't call myself in the optimization area. I was working in control, eventually robustness, but I was certainly a user of optimization, and so I was aware of some of the big goings-on in the former Soviet Union. But I came to know Boris mainly in a technical way through our shared interest in stability theory, an entirely different set of results, certainly, I guess, influenced by your background in optimization, a way of thinking, but we came to know each other through the interactions with Boris and Yakov Tsipkin. That's how it first started out, and some meetings at IFAC and maybe a couple of other locations, and then it kind of blossomed into a joint proposal that we made. Boris was the principal investigator on the Russian side, and I was on the US side, and the National Science Foundation was very interested. They had this program, it was called FSU, Former Soviet Union, and Scientific Collaboration. That's a rough approximation, and they were encouraging it. It was an era when things were warming up quite a bit, and we got lucky and got funded, and there were two teams of researchers, a lot of great researchers on the Russian side, and a lot on the US side. Roberto was there, and others came, Constantino. A bunch of us made trips, and we had workshops in Russia, and we had one in the US. Karatanov, who had to leave early, was certainly a central figure. And as things went along, it turned into a couple of trips to Madison. Pavel Sherbakov and Boris came, and I just remember we had the greatest time. If I had to think back at kind of things that I remember, the fun, I guess I would say, in terms of salient characteristics, probably a giant influence on me, was the enjoyment of the research. And that got pretty intense at times. I remember when we were working on stuff, I mean, I'd go home and, you know, I was whacked out because I was also doing some teaching and we were interacting like all afternoon and I was like exhausted. And then, you know, I'd kind of be worried I'd be up like half the night because I'm trying to keep up with his very fast pace. And so I'm scribbling notes and trying to solve problems. And of course I'd come in first thing in the morning and Boris would have the problem completely solved. And, you know, my meager notes were kind of second. But it was great, great pleasure, despite, I remember a lot of exhaustion. I mean, you were like there like early in the morning and doing stuff. And of course, over time, we all got to know each other, and it was the pleasure of doing research. I think Boris might share a thought that I had. I mean, all of us, year by year, get closer to something which might be called retirement. And I think Boris epitomizes it more than me. Sometimes when people ask me, are you ever planning to retire one day? I say that I do about 80% of my work for free. So why would I retire if I could get a salary and I would do it anyway? But that's nothing compared to Boris, because I remember discussions we had early on, and I don't remember the numbers, like top Russian researchers. Here's someone from the Academy of Science was like a couple of $100 a month or something to that effect, right? It was like, I'm thinking to myself, well, you are doing your research for free. So, yeah, so, you know, it was clear to me that sort of the combination of, it wasn't a job. Most of us in this room would say it isn't a job, although we all would also say that maybe for 50% of our colleagues who aren't here, it is a job. But I guess one of my takeaways is that there was kind of the pleasure of doing research. It was never, you know, a task or anything like that. And I think that had a very lasting influence on me, which I take into the future. So if I get 10 extra years of research, because the injection of joy in the act of solving problems, I'll thank you for that. So that's probably a good place to
I suggest to pass the word to a person of a younger generation. Maybe, I don't know, Dimitri Gord. Oh, next. After Dimitri. Okay. Oh, great.
Sorry. Boris, it's strange to hear you talk about these years when you're trying to go to the West, while at that same period, I could travel to the East. I was probably, there were few people that could do that, because I was just French from my father and Russian from my mother. And I could come here to Russia every summer and go back to the West every time. So that was, you had difficulties. Oh, that was not simple, of course. We needed a visa, we needed a lot of things. But we could do that with my mother. And, well, it's strange to think that, okay, I enjoyed both sides for a long time. And for a long time, coming here was only vacations, and for the past 10 years, it's also science. And this is also thanks to you. It's very strange because every time I come here, I discover new things from Russian science that I don't know. Everybody would expect that I should know both sides, but fortunately, I essentially, well, I had all my studies in France, so I do discover everything now, and it's very nice. And concerning science, then, as Bob said, well, I'm in the same case, a robust control guy, not really an optimization, and that's one of the things I discovered when working with a lot of you, and with you, Boris, in particular. we've done things in randomized hit-and-run stuff together in Vienna. And then a couple of years after, we started working with Roberto on the randomized tools and with Fabrizio. And that's a very strange thing that in the end, we're sort of working all together on these things and discovering things. So it's nice to see that, yeah, coming for me from control, discovering a lot of things in optimization, mixing all the two things. I think there's plenty of things to do and further in these topics. And you probably started a long time ago, but for the future, I think it's really a nice direction to pursue, at least, and discover new things in there. Thank you.
So, yeah, I'm here as a representative of the younger generation, I guess. For a while. So, this is my last occasion. So it's, I just wanted to share with you my experience and share a couple of memories about Boris. So the first one is dated back, I think, 1999. It was, I think, the first time when Boris came to Torino, Politecnico of Torino, for a collaboration organized by Roberto. And that was the first time I met Boris. And so I remember getting to know this new guy coming from Russia. It was kind of exotic for me. And I was really impressed by his humanity first, and also surprised by the fact that I was young and inconsiderate at that time, and he could sit beside me and we scribbled, and that was the first time we eventually published a paper together on stochastic gradient approach to linear matrix inequalities with uncertainty, and so that was the occasion and actually motivated me to do further research in this area, so optimization under uncertainty. So this is due to Boris. And the second memory is a funny memory. With Fabrizio, we were looking in our archive, in our notebook, to see if we could find some picture of it. I don't know if you remember it, Boris. It was in 2000 in CDC in Sydney. And so there was like a session off, so we decided to go to the beach. And Boris was with us, and he was so patient to wait for me and Fabrizio while we were swimming at sea. But we stayed there too long, and after that there was the reception. And Boris stayed in the sun for too long, actually for too long. So what happened is that when we went back to the reception, me and Fabrizio were more or less normally normal, but Boris was like completely red, but fluorescent. And I think this appears in some pictures that appeared on the CDC side. I don't know, do you remember it, Boris? So I'm very, very pleased to be here, to have this occasion to spend some time with you, and so thank you very much again.
Yeah, we don't have many ladies in this room, but I want to give a word to Anya, even a more younger person who also worked with Boris.
Yes, Professor Boris Theodorovich is a very important person in my life, extremely important, and he's the person who brought me into science. And I would like to tell you about two stories that connect me and Boris Theodorovich. First, how we met. I was a student of second year of Moscow State University, and at this time we needed to choose a base organization where we study. And I chose Institute of Control Sciences. And there were some professors. Boris Theodorovich was not one of our professors, but all the courses of mathematics I liked very much. And to one of the professors I told that I would like to study also and to work during the summer. And then he said, okay, maybe I know someone who you can work for. And on one of the breaks, he just introduced me to Boris Theodorovich. At this point, I didn't expect that the work with Boris Theodorovich would be so interesting and exciting. But I would say that I never saw it, and I have never seen it after I worked with Boris Theodorovich, because it's only a person who sat with me 2 hours almost every day explaining things. And I am really thankful to Boris Theodorovich for this, because I never also understood topics so good as this topic. And the second story is how I came to Austria. After I already finished bachelor degree in Moscow State University, and then I worked for 1 year as a master student, also with Boris Theodorovich. He asked me, Anna, what are you planning to do after you graduate from university? And I said that I don't know, maybe I will go to industry, because all my colleagues usually go to industry after MIPT. And he said, okay, maybe you thought something working for PhD, doctoral degree. And I said, yeah, well, that would be very interesting. And he said, okay, this year you just try to apply for one PhD after the 5th course. You will not get this, of course, but in a year, when you apply for the next PhD, maybe you get it. And at this moment, he had an open position of his friend in Austria, who I applied for, and went to their rehearsal or interview. And Professor Fluk, he took me as a student PhD, and Professor Polik, I think, was very surprised, because at this point I didn't finish my master's yet. And then we worked with Boris Theodorovich externally on emails, and also I'm very thankful for him for this, that he allowed me to go already after 5th grade to Austria. Thank you very much, Boris Theodorovich. Happy birthday.
So I think, you also are, you're welcome.
Well, I am kind of a applied mathematician, but I never had any connections with Boris, any mathematical connections. Actually, he was ahead for me during our tourist trips. Among mathematicians on the mathematical faculty and among others, it was common to spend summers traveling. Me, I preferred mountain trips, or just during spring, May days, like usually the vacations, we canoed along small rivers that were very high, the waters were high. The rivers were there was kind of floods at that time. So, and usually we had to have a head of a company, and everybody paid him. So for years and years, Borja was the head of our companies, and so he was very strict, and we had to pay, and we always did that. Sure, there were some discussions and so on and so forth, but basically he was supposed to be the beloved chef. And therefore, I think that he was very important for all of us, for a large company, and for me personally. Thank you very much.
Just one comment. During this mountain hiking, I understood that democracy is not the best way for governing people. You know, sometimes have dictator, let's say mostly authoritarianism is a better way. But maybe it's just such extreme situation as hiking. And what happened there? Well, sometimes I would say, well, let's stop here. We are unable to go we had, and well, they believed me, and we got back. So, if we should discuss it and vote, should we go or not, it will be disaster.
So he is a dictator.
Now, people of any age and any country are welcome, and they took it.
I decided to tell you about some things about Boris Fedorovich, which are unknown to most people in this room. But before that, I would like to recall some nice thing from old good times, 60s and 70s, when I first met Boris Fedorovich. That time it was easier, relatively easy to come from St. Petersburg to Moscow, like now. So I was lucky. There was no the wall between these two cities. And once when I submitted the paper to Journal Automation and Control, I got a call through Yakubovich from Tsipkin, inviting me to give a seminar on this paper, and I was very happy. It was my probably first visit to Moscow, and I first met Boris and other people like Leonard Hugh. That time we were working in related areas, and also, how to say, these seminars in Tsipkin's laboratory were like celebrations of science. Visitors were accepted with kindness, and science, mathematics, control was the main things, like the main things in the lives of everybody. And after that, many times we met in many places and worked in sometimes in close areas, and sometimes in different, quite different areas. And recently, when it seemed that most political problems were in the past, in the 21st century, many people, researchers in Russia, discovered that life is not very good for researchers. No walls, and sometimes there is money, but relation to attitude of the administration and government to Russian scientists was not very nice. And it was a few years ago, and we were discussing freely these things at the forums in the internet, like youngsters, like kids. Professors discussed these issues and decided that we need to do something. We need to resist to this bad attitude to Russian scientists. And we created a society of researchers. And I felt myself like an opposition researcher, because it's sort of resistance. Why my area is science, not politics? And nevertheless, we cannot sit in the closed room of science. We sometimes need to go to the shop. We need to go to other cities, and our groups should grow, and it's difficult to grow them currently, and it's getting worse and worse, by the way. But I'm not speaking about this. What was important for me? I often, as many other people in this room, I came and met Boris, and we were discussing everything. And I agree with Boris, who said that he is not typical for Russian scientists because he would speak about everything freely, completely freely, sort of liberal intellectual. And it was very important, it still is important, because we discussed very difficult things, and finally when we organized this society with other people, I was surprised once when noticed that Boris became a member of the society. And it was so encouraging for me. It meant for me that we are on the right way, we are doing right things. And because, you know, for many of us in this profession, Boris Theodorovich Polik is like meet etalon in Paris, which is absolute right, how to say, etalon is good word? Good. Yes. So I'm happy to be here, and I would like to wish many happy returns of the day to Boris. Thank you.
I was sure that this kind of meeting gives some kind of new idea, but when I plan to go here, I don't understand what I maybe new know. But today I understand what means back to the future. Back to the future, I try to go back to the Boris Theodorovich said about history from 50 years, yes? And begins from optimization, control. In 16th, 17th, nobody understands what the future of this area will be network. And what Boris Theodorovich established for last 50 years, he established a network of science. Because as my example, and I am sure for many other guys say that it's very difficult, for example, in voice program, you have a random connection. One guy call the other and maybe break after some kind of period. But Boris Theodorovich sent me a letter. Maybe 1 month this letter goes to me from Moscow to St. Petersburg. I wrote him. And after that the connection was strong and for many long years. And I am sure that all in this audience say the same. But it's very, very strong and very, very difficult to keep the connection between people. And really, Boris Theodorovich for many of us is not a window to the West science, but his network allows us to use this network too. And I think that back to the future is for network, for communication, and for this kind of society. And this is maybe, as I understand, what means back to the future.
Anybody else wants to say a word? You?
No. I just to say, well, something else, and I will not survive.